Okay, so we want to start off in this course by thinking about what exactly does it mean to measure something? What exactly is a measurement? And we're actually going to start by thinking about the meaning of this term, not from the science and engineering perspective, but let's think about it in complete general first. So if you think about it, in your day-to-day life, for your entire life, you measure things, you take measurements, and most of the time you're doing this informally. But we measure things all the time. We take measurements. So, for example, if you describe to yourself or someone else how tired you are, you're giving a measure of how tired you are. It's an informal measurement, right? It's not like a science and engineering measurement, but it's still a measurement. How happy you are or sad you are. How good of a baseball player someone is. All of these processes contain the same exact characteristics and features as if you took a measurement of something with a ruler or a tape measure or some precise temperature measurement in a lab. It's all the same exact characteristics and features. Okay, so what exactly are we doing when we measure something? Well, the idea is we do a measurement because we're trying to describe to ourselves or someone we're talking to or whoever, we're trying to describe the extent or degree or level of something. That's what we're trying to do. I don't want to say we're trying to quantify or describe how much, because that is true, but that implies that there's numbers involved, and there doesn't necessarily have to be numbers involved for a measurement. It's just you're trying to describe the level or the degree or the extent of something. Okay, so if we look at the definitions of measure and measurement in the Webster's Dictionary, this is the latest 2025 Webster's entries. So we've got these two definitions for measure, one for measurement, and then there's also measure up, right? You might ask, well, how does something or someone measure up? Similar idea to what we're talking about. All right, so this first definition here, we're not concerned with at the moment. Maybe a unit of measurement, kind of, because this is, so, okay, an adequate or moderate portion, something's done with good measure. That's not what we're talking about here. The act or process of measuring, a rhythmic structure or movement, a legislative bill. So yeah, we're not talking about this first definition, but this second definition, let's see, maybe not even every one of these as well. So yeah, number 2 is mainly what we're talking about here. To find out the size, the extent, or amount of. To find out or to describe it. Let's see, to bring into comparison or competition. Yeah, kind of number 3 as well. How does something measure up? Who's better, LeBron or Jordan? Well, you have to make that comparison, you've got to measure their abilities. To mark or fix in multiples of a specific unit, no. To serve as a means of measuring. So, yeah, we're really talking about 2 and 3 here. And then a measurement, so the act or process of measuring, and then a figure, extent, or amount obtained by measuring. So, yeah, that's the final result of you've made the comparison, or you describe the extent, and so that's the result, is the measurement you made. All right, so now we've established what exactly we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish when we measure something. But one important thing to remember about a measurement, and I think subconsciously, just because we're human beings, it's common sense, we all inherently understand this, but a lot of times we're not really aware that this is what we're doing every time we do a measurement, is that, so every measurement that's ever been taken in the history of humanity, whether a formal or informal measurement, this is required to do a measurement, is that there's always a reference. There's always a reference. When you do a measurement, you're comparing something that's at hand in the present moment to a reference. And that's how you effectively describe the extent of what you're trying to describe. That goal is achieved because you and or the person you're communicating with compares what's at hand to that reference and then gets a sense for the degree or the level or the extent of what's being talked about. And in general, this reference is going to be something that you and the person you're communicating with are familiar with, or the comparison wouldn't really work. So if you describe to someone how tall a basketball player is, you might say 6 foot 6 inches, 6 foot 8 inches, 7 foot 1 inches. And so is the reference in that case like the inch, since people understand how big an inch is in terms of space? I guess maybe, but the reference in that case is really more of the person you're talking to has a sense for how big a 7 foot person is. That's like, 7 foot 1, 7 foot 2. That's Shaquille O'Neal. 6 foot 6 would be this tall of a person, like a shooting guard. They know that they're about 5 feet something tall. So they've got different references they can go to. If you're describing how tired you are, the reference in that sense is that we all have plenty of life experience to understand what it means to be very tired or very energetic or anywhere in between. So there's multiple ways you can describe or measure how tired you are. There's plenty of references to compare to. Now, sometimes we do use quantifications with measurements, and we do this informally as well. So every time you say on a scale of 1 to 10, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you or how sad are you? In that sense, the reference is not the numbers. The numbers are just a tool. It would depend on the context of the conversation, but if you were a 10 sad, then you're depressed. It's kind of what I would think. If you're a 0, then you are having one of the best days of your life. You see, we have those references that both you and whoever you're communicating with are familiar with. Otherwise, the measurement wouldn't be effective. Now, also note that this scale of 1 to 10 and even more official scientific measurements that have scales, so allowing you to quantify the measurement, note that the actual quantification, the numbers, don't mean anything in and of themselves. You're not, what I mean is that here, you're not referencing numbers. It's all works based on the numbers being associated with what you're referencing. The 10 is associated with, and that's what you're referencing. You know what it means to be depressed. You understand that reference. You understand the reference of being very happy. And so with that, that's probably enough. Maybe for some reason you don't have any clue what it means to be in between, but that would be enough to where you could kind of get a sense for, okay, I know what really sad means. I know what really happy means. So you could put 2 and 2 together to figure out something in between. Or if you lived plenty of life like all of us, then you do actually have a bunch of references you can go to in between. But it's the underlying, it's what's underlying what's been quantified, the scale, is what's being referenced, not the numbers themselves. Just numbers, 0 through 10, don't mean anything in and of themselves. Okay, so now we've reminded ourselves of exactly what it means when we measure something. And so next, what we want to do is we want to think about this concept of measurement more specifically for more formal, official, scientific measurements. So measuring lengths, temperatures, concentrations, lab measurements. And while it may seem that now that you've kind of reminded yourself of what it means to measure, that the idea of measurement in the scientific sense is simple. And while that is true, it does get a little more confusing than you would think. So we're going to have to unwrap a lot of these concepts slowly. So for example, what are the different references for what we measure in science and engineering? And what exactly are we measuring? What exactly is a dimension? What exactly is a unit? We can take really precise measurements, but what's the limit to how precise of a measurement that we can take, and how does that all work? Again, a lot of this can get very confusing, but once we unwrap it all carefully, I think in the end, it'll all become pretty clear to you.